Welcome to our second network event of the year, Digital Inclusion. First of all, I just want to say a very big thank you for turning up today. We've got, like I said, a full house, nearly 30 people, so that's really great to see the network growing and that you can see that this is an important issue to talk about. Before we actually start, what I tend to do is lead a very short meditation. The reason is just to drop into the space that we're in and to give us a few minutes just to ground and to bring some calmness to our minds. So it's an invitation. You don't have to meditate if you don't want to. And you're also welcome to turn your camera off. Most people do that. So if you would like to do that, please go ahead. I'll give everyone a second. It looks like everyone is. Fantastic. So the practice is an invitation to become aware of your breath. So first of all, I'd like you to find a comfortable seat. So that could be sitting upright in a chair, or you could be cross-legged on the floor, and you can also be kneeling. So I'll give you a second just to find somewhere comfortable to sit. And when you're ready, gently lower your gaze to a point on the floor, or you can close your eyes completely. If you place your hands on your thighs with your palms facing up, or you can clasp your hands in your lap, whatever is most comfortable for you. And the key instruction is to become aware of your breath. You're not trying to change your breath in any way. You're simply observing the natural rhythm of your breath. Start by noticing the air coming in and out of your nostrils. Or you could watch your abdomen rising and falling with each breath. If your mind starts to wander away from your breath, to maybe a thought or a memory or what you're going to have for lunch this afternoon, gently notice that and then guide your mind back to your breath. Your breath is your life force. And if your breath becomes erratic, your mind can also become erratic. And when your mind becomes erratic, your breath can also become erratic. So if there's ever a moment where you're feeling out of sorts, the best thing to do is bring your attention back to your breath. Notice the air flowing in and out of your nostrils. Or watching your abdomen rising and falling with each breath. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. Perhaps feel a sense of peace, quiet, and calmness in this moment. Please know that this awareness of breath meditation is coming to an end. So whenever you feel ready, gently open your eyes. You might want to stand up, might want to walk around, might want to stretch. Maybe have a yawn. Do whatever you need to do just to land back into the room that you find yourself in. And turn your cameras on whenever you feel called. Julie said, loving the cat noises behind me. Thank you very much. Trying to bring some calmness to the room with a wet cat is quite an interesting task. Oh, you're very welcome, David. Yeah, I think meditation is really dear to my heart. It's something that's helped me through some really challenging times for about the last 12 years. And it's always something that I like to bring to events that I facilitate. Also makes me calmer as well, because there's always some nerve before you facilitate an event. You want to make sure that it works well. And I've got a cat trying to eat my headphones right now. So our first event a couple of months ago, digital inclusion was mentioned, and it got quite a lot of people talking. So yeah, I see some faces nodding. So Gary and I had a chat afterwards, and we felt that we wanted to host a digital inclusion event sooner than the following 3 months, just because we feel like it was a bit of a hot topic. And we wanted to find out more about why moving people from digital exclusion into digital inclusion is important. We wanted to find out how to do this, and also to take lessons from those who have successfully done this. And we wanted to provide a space for all of you to ask questions if needed, and to feel supported in how you might approach digital inclusion in your local area. The way that the event is going to flow is we have 4 speakers. They're all going to have 10 minutes to share their experiences of digital inclusion. In between each speaker, we're also going to give each person 10 minutes for question and answers. If anyone has any questions that go over the 10 minutes, we're going to have an open floor space at the end of the meeting, so we can then approach any more questions, just so everyone has enough time to speak. And also in between each speaker, we're also going to share either an audio or a video of people with experience in having moved from digital exclusion to digital inclusion. So these are all people that had been homeless in the past, and in some way or another, our network supported them in moving into digital inclusion. The reason I wanted to bring real voices is I think sometimes we can forget why we're doing what we're doing. If we're quite far away from front line, we can not speak to the people that we need to speak to. So I thought it was really important to bring those voices to the event, so we can really understand that digital inclusion is a very important topic. So hopefully that will kind of hit it home as to why we're here and what we're doing. So has anyone got any questions before we start? No, I don't think so. Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to play the first clip from Get Connected 100. So this is a Simon Community Scotland project, and they provided 100 people experiencing homelessness with a digital advice, unlimited connectivity, support from a trained digital champion, and a learning framework for digital skills. So the first 3 clips that we're going to hear throughout the event are going to be from that project. And the last clip that we're going to hear is from SHIPS, which is a Leeds initiative. It stands for Smart Health Inclusion Peer Advocacy. But then we'll also introduce each one beforehand. So the first person we're going to hear from is Marianne. Can I just check that everyone could hear that? No? Okay. James?
I think you probably need to share your screen while you do it and share the window that you're playing the music.
Ah, okay. Thank you. Okay, can you see this? The iTunes. Okay, I'm going to play this. Can you hear this?
Can't hear it, yeah.
Oh. James, you know what might be the problem?
I don't actually.
Hi, can I just jump in?
Yes.
When you're sharing your screen, are you checking the little box at the bottom that also says share audio?
Let's have a look. Ah, there we go, share sound.
There you go.
Ah, there's always something, isn't there? Always something. Thank you. Okay.
Support worker Kevin.
Can you hear that? Okay, great, we got there.
I'm a bit more confident now than I ever have been because I didn't.
We're now going to hear from Marianne, who's had a truly life-changing experience with the Get Connected 100 project, and a support worker Kevin.
I'm a bit more confident now than I ever have been because I didn't even know how to send an email. It's made me a lot more positive with what you can use on a phone because I had no idea at all. I've been using Facebook Messenger, been in contact with family that I haven't been in contact for a long time. I find that a great bonus because there was no way my daughter and I been in contact with each other. And although it's difficult with the feelings and everything, I think she's at an age now that she wants to ask questions. She's 14 and I feel that it's opening up maybe a friendship in the horizon, but at least it's started to open airways. I've also enjoyed the phone because it gives me freedom to contact friends and support. I've been able to contact doctors, surgeries, hospital appointments, and keeping the phone is keeping me stability and my new tenancy. Before I had my home, I had no house because I couldn't keep in contact with people to actually stay in a house or arrange things to be in a house. And now I've been in a house since February because it's helped me being able to stay in touch with like my housing officer, my support workers, mental and physical health workers, like doctors and Kevin and other people. So it really has helped me, it really has. Through Google, I found that I can get quick ways to get numbers for different things, like the housing, my consultant from the hospital, the electricity company and gas company and benefits agencies as well. It helps with that to fill in forms, and I'm trying to change my benefits at the moment, so this has been helping me having access to a phone in my own time, because sometimes it takes me a bit longer than other people to get things done, but when I've got my own phone I can do it in my own time. Although I'd had phones in the past, sometimes I didn't have the top-ups in the phones to use the things that the actually phone had, so I think it is a great idea about having the SIM card. It is a positive thing in my life, having a constant SIM card. You don't need to worry about the direct debit coming out your account and it's not getting paid and you're getting switched off. Well, during the coronavirus lockdown, I managed to order food online, and I also managed to get in contact with food banks in my local area when I had no money that could help me out with food and other things that I needed at the time. It's a lifeline to me.
So the reason I wanted to share that is because something that stood out to me when Marianne was speaking was the fact that she was able to establish a relationship with her 14-year-old daughter. And I think a parent and child relationship is possibly one of the most important relationships that we can have to build solid foundations for adolescence and adulthood. So it's just a great example of how we can bring families together through digital inclusion. With that being said, I'm going to hand over to Jamie Trout, who is Head of Digital at Simon Community Scotland, and he's going to tell us more about Get Connected 100. Yeah.
Hi everyone. Yeah, sorry I got kicked out there. I'm not sure what happened, but could you see the screen when I shared it?
Yes.
You could, right? Yeah. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'll just reshare.
Yeah, we can see it, and I think we can hear you now.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks so much, Saray, for pulling everything together. It's really great opportunity for us to come and share what we've been doing with digital inclusion, but also to learn from some of the other the names and organisations that are on the schedule as well. So really delighted to be part of it, and thanks again for that. Today I'll be talking to you about the Get Connected 100 project. Marianne, who you've just heard from, was one of the participants in that project. So we connected 100 people experiencing homelessness to the digital world. And I'll just to give you some context, research from the University of the West of Scotland states that people who experience homelessness are the most digitally excluded in the UK. They have the lowest levels of digital skills, device ownership and connectivity, and also often low levels of motivation, trust, and either no or a very small support network as well. So it's there are so many barriers to try and help people experiencing homelessness to get online. So this project is, I'll talk to you a little bit about how we overcame a lot of those barriers, and yeah, some of the results from as well as from what you've heard from Marianne, but also some of the results from across the other parts of the project. So we shared we received funding from the Scottish Government to roll out a project, and we decided to roll out the Get Connected 100 project, which launched in March 2021 after a sort of a rapid design and implementation. We wanted to do this as a response to the pandemic after a few pilots and trials in 2020. We worked in partnership with some of the key homelessness services providers in Scotland, Streetwork, Simon Community, Turning Point, Aberdeen Serenians, Frontline, Fife, and Seascape and Cath. So it was a truly national project and really kind of brought in that spirit of collaboration from across the third sector. The model that we used was device, data, support and framework. So I'll just quickly jump into each of those key areas and give you an overview of some of the key information. So in terms of the device, we gave the people in the project a choice of a smartphone or a tablet. 41% of people chose to go with the smartphone. Reasons for that are that they can use the calls and texts that come with the unlimited the unlimited SIM card, which I'll touch on later, but also that it's portable and easy to use, and people wanted just maybe a smaller device. But the reasons that 59% of people went with the tablet was generally screen size and wanting to watch videos. There was also some people wanted to do employment preparation or maybe already had a phone, or it was maybe that they wanted to use it with their child and it was a bit more versatile. For the data, we set up an unlimited SIM card with calls, texts and data, and this was a really critical part, as Marianne touched on in her clip there. We didn't want people to worry about running out of connectivity. People shouldn't have to choose between contacting their family when they're lonely and isolated and contacting their doctor when they're sick. We want people to have the choice and flexibility to use all aspects of the digital world whenever they need it. So even with like data allowances of 5 or 10 gigabytes, with people using Netflix or YouTube, you can blast through that much data in a weekend, and then they'd be digitally excluded again. So we're really keen to help people to have access to unlimited connectivity. In terms of the support, we found that the pre-existing relationship between the frontline worker is absolutely critical to the successful delivery of digital inclusion. The support that provision fosters trust and confidence and sort of a rapport between the person they're supporting. And this makes frontline staff the ideal people to nurture those digital skills. And that learning in a person-centered way. But we actually trained all of our staff as digital champions. So we got the staff to set up Google accounts for the people we support. This gave them access to Gmail, and all of the G Suite tools. So Docs and Drive and Meet, and also gives them access to the Play Store as well, so they can download lots of other apps, and they have an email address to log into other accounts such as social media accounts. So getting an email address is really critical. But then we also set up the device and got the SIM card registered and handed over the device. But then we also trained all of the staff in digital inclusion as well, which I'll just touch on in a moment. So the final point is the frameworks. We developed a learning framework of digital skills called the Quick Wins framework, and this was designed to get people up and running with digital straight away. So looking at what are the most useful and relevant apps, websites and tools to help people in their current situation. And this was a guide for staff members to go through that with the person while they have the phone. So they can choose, some tools that they may not be familiar with as well, and potentially find out what might be available that they might not have been aware of. The Quick Wins focused on 4 key areas, which was communication, so emails, messaging, video calls, finding reliable information, so from sources such as the NHS or the government, or reliable news websites, managing finances, so online banking, PayPal, managing benefits, and finally entertainment, leisure and learning. So that's things like streaming videos, online reading, podcasts, gaming. So the reason we chose these 4 categories is that if we felt that we could help people to stay in touch, stay safe and be informed, access their money and live within their means, and enjoy their spare use of time and increase their well-being, this would definitely improve quality of life, especially in the context of a pandemic. So we handed over the devices on the 1st of March last year, and they were handed over by the digital champions and set up and passed on to the person. And the digital champions continued to support that person to use the device on a daily, sometimes, or weekly basis, so that they could get the most out of the device. And 6 weeks later, we followed up with an evaluation process. The evaluation process had 2 parts to it. One was that everybody who participated, staff and service users, completed a survey or a questionnaire, and we also conducted interviews with around 30% of all the participants as well. So the findings from this evaluation process, we wrote up the Get Connected 100 report, which is available on the Simon Community website, but I'll just go through some of the highlights of the impact from the project. In the evaluation, we asked lots of questions, and here are some of the results. So 92% of people felt inspired to learn more, 91% of people felt more confident with digital, 94% said they would continue to use digital, 92% placed more value on connecting to the internet, 91% of people increased use of digital tools, 98% of people found their digital champion support helpful, and 96% of people in the project said that it positively affected their lives. If we also look at what the digital champions said, they said that people's engagement in support increased in 85% of cases. And the digital champions said that the lives of the people they support were improved, and that was across the board, 100% of people. So as an overview, this shows like an overwhelmingly positive experiences for people in the project. And if you think that it's such a relatively low amount of money to invest to help people to get online, it really does feel like a bit of a game changer in terms of helping people to recover from homelessness. So how did people use the devices? People were using the devices to communicate. 96% of people, 88% of people felt more connected, 85% of digital champions said that there were people had increased their engagement and support. And some of the key themes from all of those interviews was basically connecting with friends and family and support networks. It was absolutely critical. We have hundreds of reflections from across the board from service users through the evaluation process. But the two examples on the screen just show that it was really connecting with friends and family, and they are such easy, quick wins. It's just installing a messaging app and suddenly they're connected. Finding reliable information, 92% of people feel more informed, with 70% of people accessing government updates and news, and 52% of people accessing health information. Again, within the context of the pandemic, they're really, really important statistics. The key themes, again, was just having access to information, people being able to find out whatever they want, whenever they need it. COVID updates, access to homelessness services, weather apps, bus tracking apps, or stuff around hobbies and interests. In terms of financial or money matters, 53% of people felt more in control of their finances, and 53% of people were able to buy things online. You will notice that those statistics are slightly lower. I think that's for a number of reasons. Basically, there are a lot greater barriers to opening bank accounts than there are to downloading WhatsApp. But to get over half of the people in the project able to start using a device to manage their finances really felt like a quick win. And we're now developing partnerships with some of the key banks in Scotland to help us increase those statistics. The key themes, again, was that people just felt more in control and could budget and manage their lives better. And in terms of entertainment, 96% of people accessed online entertainment, with streaming videos, online gaming, and audio streaming featuring quite highly on people's lists. But this is so much more than just watching YouTube or playing games. People were learning musical instruments, people were learning languages or joining meditation groups and other online communities. So it was a real varied mix of what people were using the device for. And what came through really strongly is that when doing that, it's a great distraction from falling into perhaps other more destructive behaviours, which we've seen in our services, especially in reducing drug use and promoting harm reduction. It stopped people from perhaps doing other things with their time. And the one thing that actually Marianne had said, which wasn't by design, but did say in her clip, was that it's been a lifeline to her. And this is the phrase that we heard over and over again across the project. So I think I think when you really get your head around that this is a lifeline for people, it makes you realise how critical it is in people's journey out of homelessness. So just to touch on that quickly before I finish, people experiencing homelessness are the most excluded and marginalised groups in the country, and inclusion is a key aspect of the work that we do right across the homelessness sector. And we're focused around digital inclusion, but there's all kinds of other inclusion agendas, such as social, health, financial, democratic, educational, inclusion in public services, and cultural inclusion. But through this project, what we realized is that digital inclusion isn't just another type of inclusion, it's a pathway for all of the types of inclusion around the board. So that's the catalyst to allow people to access other inclusion agendas. So when people are digitally included, they can contact their friends, they can access the National Health Service, they can open a bank or buy things online and get the best deals, they can register to vote or other types of civic participation, they can sign up to college or other online courses, they can access public services, and they can be culturally included in part of society. So when people are digitally excluded, they miss out on all of those aspects of life. And if we think about how disadvantaged we would be if we weren't able to access the internet and get online, whether we wouldn't be able to contact friends or do our jobs or join conferences here again in this situation, or buy things online, it just shows you how critical and how embedded digital is in our lives. And that if we want to, for the vast majority of people experiencing homelessness, this is the unfortunate reality that they can't do that, but we can change this picture. Our evidence shows that the Get Connected model enables people to make meaningful change in their life. And yeah, it really does feel like a game changer. For people who have complex needs, digital inclusion doesn't just include people in digital, it includes people in society. And I'm pleased to say that we've actually received recent funding from the Scottish Government and Good Things Foundation to expand on this programme. So we're now going to be rolling out Get Connected 500 to connect 500 more people with devices and data and digital champion support. And this actually ties in really nicely with street support. As at Simon Community, we're also being really heavily involved in rolling out street support in Edinburgh and Glasgow. But it means that we can pre-install the street support app onto the person's device and show them how to use the app as well. So that's going to give them access to all of the information and services that they need. That's it from me. I just if you want to get in touch, please do feel free. But I also just want to highlight that Nigel, who's also on this call, is going to be taking Get Connected 500 forward. He's our new digital inclusion manager. It was his first day in the role yesterday, but his details are there for networking purposes if anybody wanted to get in touch.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jamie. Something that you said really stood out to me. Digital inclusion is a pathway to other types of inclusion. And I don't think I had made that connection before, but it's obvious, when you said it in that way. So yeah, that's a great, I feel like that's a great strap line, to be honest. Digital inclusion is a pathway to other types of inclusion. It's a big one. So we've got 10 minutes for questions. Does anyone have any questions for Jamie that they'd like to ask? If you want to raise your hand. Julie?
If I may. Thanks very much. Jamie, one of the things I'm interested in is how we assess individual needs around digital inclusion, how we identify people's individual barriers. And I just wondered how you assessed where people were at the beginning in order to work out how best to meet their individual needs.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of what people need in terms of equipment or connectivity, that's just a case of work. Like we train digital champions right across all of the frontline homelessness services in Scotland who have that pre-existing relationship with the person they're supporting. So I'm sure in the organisations you work with there, I don't know what you would call them, but there's going to be the person who engages at the front line. They will be the best person to assess that situation. So if somebody needs a device or needs connectivity, we obviously provide that. In terms of where they're at in their skills journey and their abilities, we've actually been down a couple of routes with that. We initially did like a digital skills assessment to try and see where people are at in their journey. What we found with that is that while skills are really important, the other barriers are often just as important. So when we have the quick wins framework of digital skills, we get our digital champions to go through people and explain what all of the most relevant and useful tools are that would be available. And we actually did a big consultation process with staff and volunteers and people who use our services to find out what those skills and tools are. So it's all service user informed. And then our digital champions will go through the people with those tools and find out where they're at. I mean, some people can't turn on a device, and then it's up to the digital champion to actually show people how to turn on a device, how to connect to a Wi-Fi, how to use a password, how to use the basic accessibility settings. So obviously people are at totally different parts of that journey, but we just get the digital champions to do a full training session to cover all of those areas so that when they engage with people, they can kind of help them to first of all to get online if that's where they're at in their journey, but secondly to understand all of the tools and teach them how to use them.
Great, thank you, Jamie. David Sutherland has a question, so go for it, David.
We had quite a lot of devices donated to us during that period from a great number of sources. Probably about 50 for a relatively small area that was Bury in Lancashire. We had horrendous difficulties with people retaining the devices. What was your experience?
Sorry, David, can you just repeat that? With people wanting the devices?
No, well, people wanting devices, then they were either being lost, pawned, or stolen. So our device retention rate was very poor.
Right, okay.
Oh, yes, there was a need for it, massive need for it, but for people to actually keep the devices was so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, our experience was a bit different to that. I think after the first 3 months of our pilot, we had 36 devices went out, and I think 35 of them was people still had. I think one person had left it on a bus, but I realized that might not be typical across the board. I think, and this is just my opinion from our experience in our project, is that there's something around the psychological change in people starting to value digital connection, and that when people value digital connection and realize all of the benefits that it can bring to people, which is once they realize that is much greater than, say, the second-hand resale price of, say, £40 for a phone, or from pawning a phone, once they realize everything that it does bring, then they no longer want to sell a phone. So it's about trying to really increase the value of digital. And I think if you give people a device and data and build support into that and show people how to use it, and they can instantly start to get those quick wins of, oh, I can message my family, oh, I can manage my benefits, and, you know, I can watch football highlights or listen to music or whatever it is. Once you build all of the great things around digital that we all appreciate, and people start to realize that benefit, then that's when people will start to want to keep hold of it themselves. That's from our experience.
So was it through the support workers who would refer somebody in? So there was that potentially relatively long-term relationship.
Yeah, exactly. So the structure in our organization is that we have homelessness services that we operate, staff work with people and develop a relationship over a long period of time. And in fact, the digital device really helped to foster that relationship as well, because it gives them something positive to work towards. But I really think the relationship is absolutely key. If you just if you throw a device and data at someone with no support and no relationship, I'm not surprised that people would pawn them. I think it's about the support that's put around that. That's really important.
Thanks, Jeremy. I think, some of it was because we were asked by probation or council to do it without the chance of that. And some of the people, for various reasons, found it difficult too.
Yeah.
People, for historical reasons. I can understand that, but thanks very much.
Yeah,
that's a project that worked well. Really, it's really encouraging for the future.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David. We've got 2 more people that want to ask questions. Gary's one of them. Gary, go for it.
It was a question in the chat from Paul saying, I noticed the test areas are mostly urban. Are there any examples of more rural projects where the internet coverage is even more dodgy?
Absolutely. We had real problems we work in Perth with Turning Point Perth and with Cath, and I would say about 50% of the people that we support were outside of the centre of Perth and in more rural areas. And I'm afraid I don't have a quick answer for you other than providing like drop-in centres or giving people access to different types of SIM cards, so like an O2 or a Vodafone, and just testing. There is a coverage checker that you can do online, where if you type your postcode in, you'll find out which services have the best coverage. So, we found that O2 generally was the best across the country, so we went with that. But we definitely had people that really struggled to get connectivity, and then it's a major barrier for people in rural areas. I know that there's kind of plans from the Scottish Government to kind of really develop the network and the infrastructure around that, but it's I feel your pain, Paul. That's a really difficult question to overcome. Other than trying to find the best possible SIM card out there, or looking at potential shared spaces where there's available Wi-Fi. It's a really tricky one, but I'm sure other people might have some other ideas around that as well.
Thanks so much, Jamie. So we've hit our 10 minutes for question and answers. So if anyone does have any further questions for Jamie, if we can keep them to the end of the event, just so everyone has a chance to speak, and hopefully we don't run over the 2 hours. So I'm just going to share my screen again. The sound is on this time. And I want to play a clip from the Get Connected 100 program again. And this is from someone called Jody.
We're now going to hear.
Can you hear that? Great.
Hear from Jody, who is a participant in the Get Connected 100 project, and Hannah, who was a digital champion and helped and supported her to use the device.
I got a choice out of a phone or a tablet. I chose the tablet. It gave me a wee bit of relief because I'm a recovering addict as well. So it's helped me get to online meetings. It's helped me when I've been struggling and when I've been down. I've had that help. I've had that support. I can get connected to like fellowship, and I've been able to use Zoom, WhatsApp, Facebook, even say hello to a friend online. It's helped my mental health. It's helped my whole well-being. Like, it's given me a whole new outlook. It makes me feel wanted. It makes me feel needed, and that is a homeless addict. That's all we want, is to feel wanted and feel needed in other people's lives, and this is what the digital scheme gives.
Yeah. When I was listening to that last week, I think I listened to it 3 times, and something that stood out for me with what Jody said is that it helps me to feel wanted. It helps me to feel needed. And I think as humans, we have this innate need to want to feel connected to people. So yeah, it's just another example of how digital inclusion is really important. I can see that Sadhana is sharing her screen, but Matt Nelson is going to be speaking before you. So if you can unshare your screen, we've got Matt next, and then Amy, and then you. Hang on. Thank you. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to Matt Nelson, who is the coordinator and community engagement manager at It Takes a City in Cambridgeshire. So Matt, over to you.
Hello, hi, Si. Thanks everyone, and thanks for joining today. This is a really important subject, I think, for all of us. Jamie's kind of dropped us in on top of Mount Everest. So Jamie, you've put us where we all want to be, and all I can say is send us some Scottish government funding. So yeah, you're in the Himalayas, top of the Himalayas there. We're kind of in the foothills in Cambridge. So Non, can you just, we're kind of in the foothills. I'm just going to share, give me a moment. Okay, if everyone can see that. Give me a sec. Okay. Yeah, so we're basically in Cambridge. We're perhaps several steps back down the line from where you are up in Scotland. But I think you'll see in this kind of very short presentation some very common themes that Jamie has pulled out and has perhaps shown us how we could resolve them, or at least move them further on. So this is where I'm talking to you from today. Probably a lot of you during the pandemic did a similar thing. You quickly had to find an office space. This is my office space. I just wanted to show this because I'm working on a Lenovo laptop. I bought that, got a really good deal from PC World. I did that because I'm digitally connected. My iPhone, again, because I could shop online and do all those sort of things that we take for granted. I got myself a good deal on an iPhone. So I can leave this office space now. I can walk out into the street and I'm connected. So I just wanted to sort of start from that point. We have a co-production group in Cambridge in the city, which meets about every 6 weeks. And that's people that work in the homeless sector, but also a lot of people with current lived experience. And this is where I said we'd start drawing out some common themes with Jamie. As you can see, I didn't have a phone when I was on the streets and I was isolated. It talks here about ex-veterans suffering from PTSD and how, you know, being able to access and gain that sort of mental health support was so important to them. Somebody leaving prison, saying if I leave prison, you know, why can't I be set up digitally so I'm not kind of wandering around the streets? Circling round to that centre one, which I think we've already heard, it's a lifeline, isn't it? So many of our homeless neighbours are saying to us, when that data allowance runs out, when that little bit of allowance they've got, as Jamie said, you know, they've decided to do what we do normally, stream a video, listen to some music, and suddenly their data allowance has gone and that lifeline has gone. So that's from our co-production group. I'm not going to read through this, but Vitali is actually a perfect encapsulation of the issues that we're dealing with. He was a Polish gentleman. He's come here, he worked here for a number of years, and unfortunately, COVID led him to losing his job and then being evicted from his home. He became homeless. But these are all the things that Jamie pulled out that in his project, you know, people are being able to do because they have unlimited data. This is the drum you'll hear me banging if ever you talk to me. You know, he could keep up appointments with his doctor. He could keep his universal credit claim going. He could contact his mum as long as he had a phone. But also you'll pick up here, he was sort of squatting outside Asda, trying to leech off of their free Wi-Fi. Again, just breaking down very quickly, this is the picture in Cambridge, as James said about devices. We've got really good in Cambridge. The pandemic has actually streamlined all those various organisations that bring used kit in, get it recycled and get it out. But again, the phone, for people who are currently street homeless or in very sort of insecure accommodation, the phone is the most practical solution because they still need to make those phone calls. They still need to phone Jimmy's night centre. They still need to, you know, be in contact with their drug counsellor or their probation officer. We've got some really, really good organisations in Cambridge. We've obviously got Cambridge Online, who are our main digital inclusion support charity. We've got Jimmy's, which is the night shelter, Winter Comfort, Irenians, we have them down here, and we have Cambridge Street Aid. So we're pretty confident that we can pull devices out of a drawer or whatever for anyone. But part of the problem we have with that is exactly that. That device could be a really good smartphone, or essentially it could be a brick with limited functionality. So we're relying upon the charitable donations of individuals, and that kit is often very different depending upon which person comes in on what day. And as I've said here, we haven't even got time to discuss those digital skills issues, which Jamie pulled out. They're exactly the same here. We assume if you hand someone a phone, off they go, happy days. They may not even know how to turn it on, let alone have an email, let alone be able to sign up to these services. Connectivity, again, we looked at what's currently available if you didn't have a SIM card with any data. All of our libraries and our city council run community centres, they all have public access computers. That's all well and good. Part of the problem is most of them have to be booked in advance. They'll restrict you to between 45 minutes and an hour, especially if it's a busy central library. And I don't particularly want to be discussing my personal medical information or talk to my drug counsellor or my key worker in a public space. Cafes, bars and shops, again in Cambridge city centre, we're a big tourist city as well as having a university. So most places have free Wi-Fi. But are you happy to have somebody come in whose personal hygiene might be an issue? We have found that with some of our current rough sleepers. We have CAM Wi-Fi. CAM Wi-Fi is our public access Wi-Fi system. So it's available in all of those public buildings. And also we have it down the spine of our city centre. So in our market square, along Trinity Street. So it's there and it's available for anyone to use. Part of the problem is you need to sign up using an email address. So that can be a barrier, not just somebody who's homeless, but somebody, you know, who doesn't have those skills. Be perfectly honest, the coverage is really shonky. In some places, the outdoor coverage is good. In others, it's not. And you struggle to get above 1 or 2 megabytes. So it's there in principle, but it's not great. And then the free SIMs, part of the problem we have, and this is where Jamie's project has solved it and is the nirvana for all of us, is I have a homeless client. He comes into me. I give him a SIM. It's got 5 gigabytes of data on it. Away they go. That might last them a week, a month, or whatever. That runs out, and we currently don't have a clear and simple way of funding a top-up. Just keep that phone number, keep that SIM. Away you go, get some more data. So we have had examples of homeless people in Cambridge having 10 phone numbers in a year, because every time they go into one or other of these charities that hand them out, they go, I've run out of data, and the only option that charity's got is to give them another SIM card, because we in Cambridge don't have a clear way that we can maintain that continuity of the SIM whilst updating whatever data they need. So for us, data is absolutely key. Many of you on this call will be aware of, we're starting to dip our toes in this country into the idea of national data banks. So there's one with the Good Things Foundation, Virgin and O2. And as you can see there, that provides data. And there's the Charities Connected way as well, where they'll provide SIMs that have 20 gigabytes of data on them. So you can see we're starting to address it in this country. But a little bit of politics here. It's still in the hands of the major telecoms companies. So it's for them to say, we will top up this national pool. So I just wanted to end by saying my dream is either to have what Jamie has in Scotland, where it's not an issue, or we have a system like Donate My Data in Australia. I've spoken to one of the telecoms companies who have told me this is not in their commercial interest, so it's why they won't do it. But in Australia, essentially what I can do is I have a 10 gigabyte per month allowance. I've only used 5. I want to donate that 5 gigabytes. And I just want to donate it into a central pool where anybody, not just someone who's related to me, but anybody can go along to a charity. For example, It Takes a City or Winter Comfort and say, I've run out of data, I need some more, and they can top up. So that for us really is where we are in terms of Cambridge. We are putting together a lot of the things that Jamie was talking about in their project, but it's a little bit piecemeal. So for us, the nut that we need to crack is the data nut. So please keep in touch with me, always willing to talk. And I'm going to end there before I'm told to shut up by someone. Okay, and willing to take questions, Soraya. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. I don't think I would have told you to shut up.
Oh, please do.
Thank you so much. Yes, do we have any questions for Matt from anyone? I don't see any hands up. Oh, David, yes, go for it, David.
Thanks for that, Matt. And I suppose it's a question I could have saved till the end, but it was basically around literacy. And I definitely believe that, digital inclusion is a way of overcoming some literacy issues. Where in the past we might have given information out about services or sort of particularly warnings about coronavirus and things like that on a piece of paper, and it just been thrown away the moment you give it to someone. I think there's an opportunity to sort of overcome some of these barriers, but when you're talking about logging in and setting up passwords or reading terms and conditions, there's still a massive barrier. Did you come across some of these issues yourself?
We're finding that, David. I mean, in a previous job, I was a digital inclusion officer for the city council here, and dealing with, as it were, the settled population and literacy issues. But absolutely, you find those issues are sometimes compounded within our homeless neighbours, but they would have all the same issues. So yeah, we're working with our co-production group at the moment on, we don't want to impose a solution. So we're working with some of our people who are currently experiencing rough sleeping, and some that are moving on, so they become a bit more settled, got more settled accommodation. And it's how you provide that information as simply and as clearly as possible. You're right, there are numeracy and literacy issues amongst the whole adult population, and especially in the homeless population. I don't know if Jamie had anything specific to add to that, but I say it is something that we're aware of.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Literacy. Just to clarify, David, did you mean digital literacy or actual literacy? Like
Yeah, actual.
Yeah, reading and writing literacy. Yeah, totally. We support. I think about 30% of the people we support don't have English as a first language. Some of the things that we've put in place to try and get around that is like things like Google Translate, which is really helpful for helping people to fill in forms and things. Now, one of the features on Google Translate is that you can like actually use the camera to look at a document in a foreign language, and it will translate it to over the top to a different language. But for the people we support, they can look at an English form and translate it into Polish or Romanian or whatever their country is. So that's a really incredible tool for the people we support in terms of the first language. But also things like even for people who do speak English but perhaps don't read and write English. Videos, content is really helpful as well. But again, you're absolutely right, David. It's a massive barrier, and it does come up time and time again.
Thanks, guys.
Are there any more questions for Matt? No, I don't think so. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, we're going to hear from a third participant in the Get Connected 100, and also my cat, so apologies for that. Just going to share my screen again. And this is Irene.
We're now joined by Irene Mcintosh from the More Collective, who've been a huge ally of the Get Digital programme over the last 4 years. In this project, Irene's been conducting extensive interviews with participants to help us understand the impact of digital inclusion. We asked her to share one story that really stood out.
You asked me about one particular story that sticks in my head, and I think the one that really gave me time to pause and reflect, and to be honest, have a wee emotional weep to myself about the impact of the work that we're doing, was we have someone using Simon Community Services who has been with the service for a wee while and getting amazing support from staff in her personal situation. She had a meeting coming up around access to her child, a meeting with the court around that access and access rights. And I can't think of anything sort of more overwhelming to go through, really, something so kind of personal and so emotional. And she was initially sorted out to be doing that court meeting in the hub, which is a sort of open space with Simon Community. And staff were doing a totally brilliant job of trying to create a sort of safe and quiet space for her within that kind of hectic environment. But in a freakish coincidence, the devices arrived on the day that Shona had her court case appointment. And what staff were able to do was set up her phone for her and get it all connected. Everything was all ready to go, so that she was actually able to take the device home and then, with a wee bit of support, connect into that meeting. And the reason why that is so important is, as I said at the start, I can't think of anything more personal to go through. And to be able to do that in your own home, in your own safe space, a familiar environment, it just has more dignity to it than having to do it in this busy place. So it's about the idea, I guess, that it isn't just about digital skills, is it? It's not just about a device in your pocket. It's not about achieving transactions. It's about such deeply personal human stuff. And I think for me, that was the example that really sat with me, that I went, for goodness sake, like if I had to go through this process, to do it with as much humanity as possible is so important. It's really, really important. And I think what we were talking about when we were pulling together the report, Jamie, there were loads of examples. Every single person in this piece of work has had life-changing experiences through a digital device. And I don't say that lightly because it sounds really X-factor to talk about life-changing experiences, but every call I made really emphasised these life-changing experiences that people were having.
Yeah, something that stood out for me was when Irene said, this is deeply personal human stuff. And I think sometimes we can think that having a device, having a digital connection is quite surface level, but it's really not. It allows people to connect to their families. And as Irene said, it's life-changing, and it's a lifeline to people. So just another example of how digitally including people is really important. With that being said, I'm going to hand over to Amy Hearn, who is a digital inclusion coordinator at 100% Digital Leeds. So Amy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Amy Hearn. I'm a digital inclusion coordinator at 100% Digital Leeds. We're a small team at Leeds City Council that's working to improve digital inclusion across the city. So I'm just going to share some slides. Okay, so start off with a little bit about the 100% Digital Leeds approach. Oh gosh, my computer's crashing a little bit. Okay, well, we'll just let that do that. I'll just talk. So, oh gosh, I hope my presentation doesn't crash altogether. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're back. Okay, so yeah, we're a small team at Leeds City Council that's working to improve digital inclusion across the city. So we see digital inclusion as social inclusion. So a lot like what other people have been saying today, we're looking at digital as not necessarily a thing in itself, but as an enabler for people to be able to do the kinds of things that they want to do. Recognising that those people that would most benefit from being online and the money saving options and the ways of interacting with things without having to leave the house and all those other things are oftentimes those people that are least likely to be online. So we want to support digital inclusion to reduce those inequalities as well. For us, digital inclusion means everybody in the city being able to make an informed choice on how they do things. So I don't really care personally whether people use digital tools and services or not. I would just like everybody to be able to have the same options and the same freedom of choice as I have when it comes to doing things. So that means by an informed choice, I mean people being able to make the choice as to whether to use face-to-face or digital services based on their situation at the time, what's best for them, with all of those barriers to digital inclusion removed so that they can truly make a choice. So that means understanding that the person has that choice, being offered that choice in the first place, feeling confident that they can make that choice and that they can engage with digital, having access to the resources that they need to be able to get online physically, and having access to the resources they need to be able to develop their skills so that they can really make the right choice for them in any given situation. So 100% Digital Leeds, we work by connecting with the partners that are already working in the city, already supporting those people and communities that are more likely to be digitally excluded, and working with those organisations to help them to design bespoke digital inclusion interventions and embed them within their existing services. So this is recognising that we're only a small team and we don't have the capacity to support the something like 90,000 people in Leeds that are in one way or another digitally excluded. And it's also recognising that there's a whole vast array of different kinds of people and different communities that are more likely to be digitally excluded. And that digital exclusion is often exacerbated by and made more complex by the other sort of things that are going on in their lives and the other barriers that they're facing. I am not an expert in supporting any of those communities in particular in the real way that they need supporting. I'm an expert in digital inclusion. So if I can work with those organisations and partners who are experts and trained and on the ground and understanding the needs of those particular different communities, if I can help those organisations bring a little bit of digital inclusion into what they're doing in a way that benefits the organisation as well as the individuals they're supporting, then we're using all of those existing, or utilising all of those existing skills and assets and resources and stuff like that, and also putting the support in the place where the people are already accessing services, so that we're not focusing on counting heads of individuals and saying that person is included. We're looking at putting support in a place so that as people move through those services and interact with different services, the digital inclusion support is there if they need it. That's also recognising that there are lots of different ways that a person can be digitally excluded, and it's not an on-off switch. So I could be digitally excluded tomorrow if I had a head injury, if I lost my job and didn't have the equipment that I'm using today, if I was older and got dementia. Just because somebody is digitally included at the moment doesn't mean that they're always going to be digitally included. So if we can put the support in place across the city, then it's there for whenever a person needs it. And everything that we do is about looking to build sustainable, embedded interventions that are part of the day-to-day of the organisation delivering, so that it becomes an ongoing thing, basically. So the way that we work is working with those organisations, helping them to design and deliver those bespoke interventions. Everything's about taking a person-centred, holistic approach. So thinking about the benefits of the individual and the different needs of the communities that we're working with, and looking at how we can build support interventions around that. Utilising trusted relationships. So we'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. Recognising that everybody has got a role to play in removing those barriers to digital exclusion. That role will differ depending on the person and the organisation's capacity, the situation that they're in, the skills that they have, but everyone does have a role, even if that could be identifying and signposting to another organisation, but it is about everybody playing the role. Embedding those support elements, collaborating and working towards sustainability. So in terms, I know we've already covered this a bit already, but just to go back over it, so recognising that there are 4 understood, established, universal barriers to digital inclusion, that any one person can face all of these or some of these, and a lot of them can exasperate the others as well. So skills, not knowing practically how to do stuff, not knowing how to install an app, not knowing how to send an email. Connectivity, so not having the right device, not having sustainable data, not having Wi-Fi at home, not having the right device for what you're doing at the time, sharing a device, etc. Confidence is twofold. So confidence, lacking confidence in your own digital abilities. So the kind of, I don't do digital, I touch it, it breaks, that kind of thing. And also lacking confidence in digital in itself. So I don't do online banking because people will steal my money. I don't want to put my data in here because I don't know where it's going, those kinds of things. And then the final one, motivation. So just not understanding the relevance of digital to you in your life. This is sort of varies from person to person. So this could look like somebody that's never done anything with digital at all, oftentimes an older person, that, as far as they're concerned, they've got on absolutely fine, thank you very much, we're never doing anything with digital. Why should they bother? They don't really understand what the sort of benefits could be. And then also it can be about if people that have got really low confidence and are really sort of scared about dipping their toe into the digital world, then it's about balancing with the motivation that why should they? Giving them a good enough reason to step out of their comfort zone and start engaging with digital. And that means that it needs to be something really, really of benefits to the person, something that they feels like that they can do, something that's going to help them step out of their comfort zone, that's going to make it relevant to them. So those are looking generally at the sort of barriers. So in terms of working with organisations that support homelessness, here we go. So we started off in September of last year bringing together various different organisations and different partners from across the sectors in Leeds to look at how digital exclusion is experienced by people experiencing homelessness. So we brought together partners from within the council, within the NHS and within the third sector to discuss this. And these were the different things that we came up with that were sort of unique or, you know, really focusing on understanding some of those barriers that and how they're faced, in particular for people experiencing homelessness. So looking at connectivity, obviously not having a place to stay means that people, you know, it's really, you can't have Wi-Fi in your house if you don't have a house, basically. But then also not having a fixed address or maybe a bank account or ID, meaning that people struggling to be, even if they can afford it, to be able to get contracts for phones and data, meaning that people are reliant on pay-as-you-go, which is the most expensive way to be able to buy data, and is also the least reliable way to do it. Also means that people struggle when they do have equipment to be able to keep it safe and to be able to charge it. In terms of accessing different services, it was recognised that for some people experiencing homelessness, for some services, people might not access services until they're in a crisis situation. So meaning that the organisation or the person that's seeing and supporting the person experiencing homelessness and recognising that they're digitally excluded is not necessarily best placed to be able to offer this support, and also means that, you know, some of the other situations that they're facing that are bringing forward this crisis need to be dealt with before the digital inclusion can be considered. But this was really made apparent from NHS partners that were really keen to look at how they could support digital inclusion, especially for improved health participation. But we're only seeing people when they were in a really mental or physical health crisis situation. They also didn't have an ongoing relationship with the person, and they were only there supporting the person while that crisis was being averted. So just recognising that not every situation is the best time to be supporting a person with digital inclusion, because, you know, they just need something very serious sorting out there and then. Thinking about motivation, there were lots and lots of concerns in this initial conversation about whether digital inclusion was even going to work for people experiencing homelessness. There's lots of concern about, you know, people that have got multiple and complex issues that are in crisis situations and maybe not in a mental place that's conducive to digital inclusion and, you know, learning new skills and stuff like that. And also that if we gave out equipment, there was sort of an overwhelming concern that that would be a waste of time because it would be sold for, you know, like drugs and alcohol and things like that. In terms of, because people, you know, living in survival mode, there's lots of concerns about literacy, numeracy and language barriers as well. Recognition that stigmatisation means that some of the places, like what's been said earlier, some of the places where we might refer people or signpost people to within the community to be able to get digital inclusion support, places like community buildings, libraries, cafes and stuff, might be places where people experiencing homelessness might have had a negative experience in the past, might feel unwelcome in accessing those places. So they are not as accessible. And then also recognising that there is no one group of people experiencing homelessness, and that, you know, situations and experiences vary massively from person to person, situation to situation. So really thinking about a person-centred approach and making sure that the different organisations are building an intervention based upon the needs of the particular people that they're working with, rather than just, you know, people experiencing homelessness. So these are the barriers that we identified as a group. So as I said, when we first started out, lots of concern, lots of worry that this wasn't going to work, lots of pushback basically from all of the partners. So what we decided to do was we identified through having conversations outside of that group 4 partners who were willing to give it a try. So this is what we looked at. So in terms of removing some of those barriers, so looking at skills, recognizing that people is often, that the motivation is going to be low potentially, that it's really complex situations, that people are going through all sorts of different things. Tried to look at how we could utilize those existing support systems and networks already available in Leeds, and building for those support workers to be able to offer ad hoc digital skills support as part of their existing programs. So we identified partners that have got case workers and support workers that are used to working intensively with an individual that's got lots of different complex needs, that's, they're used to being able to do sort of dynamic risk assessments on the fly as they're supporting a person, and taking all of that into account and supporting the needs of the person as they're there. We recognised that we needed to utilise safe, trusted spaces and people, that, oftentimes digitally excluded people, being digitally excluded can make a person feel very vulnerable, and having those conversations with a person that they know and trust is a lot easier and a lot more likely than people that they don't know. And then really focusing on supporting people to use the digital tools and services that are going to be useful to them in that exact moment right there, looking at what's important to the person. So not there's sometimes there is tendency to think about what would benefit a person, what a person ideally would be able to do and use, and that would make their lives easier. But for people that are reluctant, we can't start with what we know would be best. We have to start with what the person wants, thinking about how that, even if it seems like it's not super relevant at the moment, like listening to music or something, is helping that person to build up their digital confidence and their transferable skills, so that they're better prepared to be able to do the things that are more complicated and some might say more valuable, like things like universal credit and bidding for housing. In terms of connectivity, we wanted to look at how we could improve access to Wi-Fi and equipment in the spaces that within those organisations supporting people experiencing homelessness, a place where people could go, but also wanted to identify some equipment that could be gifted with data and calls to those that needed it most, recognising that places and services are open particular hours of the day and they're public, and one of the great benefits of being digitally included is being able to do what you need to do when you need to do it, if that's 11 o'clock at night, wherever you are, and recognising that for people experiencing homelessness, a piece of portable equipment is probably going to be the most useful. In terms of confidence, again, thinking about that support coming from a person who knows and trusts the person that they're supporting, that trusted relationship, and allowing the person being supported to be able to go at their own pace. And their motivations, really thinking about how we can help the person being supported understand that digital is going to be an enabler for the things that they themselves want to be able to do. So whether that is finding housing, whether that's accessing, getting back in touch with friends and family, whether that's accessing media, whatever it is, support them to do the things that they want, help them to be more independent, and support the reduction of some of those wider social determinants. And whatever we're doing, as long as it's got a digital element, is all feeding into building that skills and confidence and the sort of soft elements of digital inclusion that help the person to be more prepared for those more complicated things we might want them to support them to do later along the line. Okay, so we identified 4 key partners that were already working within the community, that have those relationships, have those existing systems set up, and that are places that everyone recognised were key organisations for people experiencing homelessness to access support. I worked with those organisations to improve their awareness of digital inclusion and exclusion, and look at how they could build digital inclusion into their service, offering digital inclusion training, stuff like that. And we partnered with an organisation called Hubbub, who have a scheme called Community Calling, where they donate reconditioned devices with a year's worth of 7 gig a month of data plus unlimited free calls and texts. So we were able to get 120 smartphones to be able to give out to homeless people in Leeds. And yeah, with the skills element was built in as part of the holistic support worker support. Okay, so what made these organisations the right partners was, so they are the trusted organisations. So they already were working with organisations that are already working with people that already have caseloads, that when we were going to them saying you've got 25 phones or whatever, they were straight away knew the people that needed them, that would most benefit. They were already used to thinking really holistically and in a person-centered way, not only thinking this person doesn't have a phone, so therefore they need a phone, but thinking this person doesn't have a phone and they are wanting to do X, Y, and Z, and they will give them it, but will also help them to do the things that they need to do. So someone earlier was mentioning about retention and reducing, making sure the phones weren't lost or sold or whatever. And that person-centered, making sure that the person really understands the intrinsic value of the device and the connectivity, rather than just the monetary value of going to cash converters and getting 30 quid or whatever, was really, really essential to making sure that the people were kept those devices. And that support was able to come because the people offering the support were working with people that they already knew, that they'd worked with for a long time, that they knew what was going on in their lives, they knew what they wanted to change about their lives, they knew all of the things they wanted to do. I will be honest, some of it did not go right. One of the organisations, St Anne's, they had about 40 devices, and about half of those were straight away just sold for drugs. The reason why it didn't work was, so they as an organisation are an absolutely wonderful organisation. They're the main organisation in Leeds. They have a resource centre where any person experiencing homelessness can walk through the doors essentially at any time and get the support that they need, and they will not be turned away. They have all of these other characteristics of trusted, specialist, positive, person-centred, ongoing support. The thing that they didn't have, which we didn't recognise, and why it's in italics on the screen here, is the ability to be selective. So they have an open door policy. Come to us for help, and no matter what's going on in your life, you will get help, no questions asked. And this is where it didn't work in terms of gifting phones, because with this scenario, with this situation, we do need questions to be asked, and we do need to be able to think about what's going on in a person's life and whether they're in the right place to be able to make best use out of the device. St Anne's, people can just walk through the door, which meant that they were giving devices and they felt pressured to give devices to people that weren't known service users, and also known service users that they knew weren't in the right place to be able to keep that device. And they felt pressured, as I say, because they're people are used to getting, if they've got 10 chocolate bars, those chocolate bars are going to the first 10 people that walk through the door. That's how they work. So the being asked to cherry pick essentially put the staff in a really difficult position, because the service users weren't being used to being supported in that way. So they stopped quite quickly from gifting devices. The other organisations are all ones that the service users are used to being offered services that are specific to them at a given time based on their needs, and not offered other services. So that's the one thing that I would definitely say is essential. So the specialist organisations, so the people that are used to and really understand and have got specialist training with things like, how to support people with severe mental health issues, how to support people to access housing, how to support people that have got addiction issues, etc. Organisations that are used to working in a really person-centred way, that have got the capacity to really sit with a person and be thinking, what's going on, what do you need, what kind of support do you need, and they've got an ongoing relationship as well to be able to continue that support with a person.
Amy, can I just it's 11 and you've had maybe 25 minutes, so we're gonna have to, I wasn't sure how long you're gonna go for, but I feel like it's okay. But if we can I'm just conscious of time and people having only half an hour left, and Sudden has to speak as well.
Yeah,
so
that's absolutely fine. So that is basically, I've got the 4 different case studies, but I can share those on the slides. So just to say, there's different case studies on there. Apart from St Anne's, everything went really, really well with making sure that the person had the full support, not just given a device, but really thinking about what they wanted to get out of it, what they would benefit from, and being supported throughout. So sorry for going so far over.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Do we have any questions for Amy at this stage? Someone's got their hand up, but I can't. Paul, yes. Oh, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Hi, Amy. That was really, really fascinating and perfectly timed. I would love to maybe chat with you if we're running out of time a bit later. You mentioned Hubbub. We've just applied for funding from the Virgin Media and Hubbub initiative called the Tech Lending Community Fund. I don't know if you've heard of that. So I'd love to know a little bit more about your experience with Hubbub. And also the stuff you were just talking about, St Anne's, is really helpful as well. I'd like to know a little bit more about that. We are a homeless charity in Luton, and we basically take anybody and everybody. And we are trying to work out, if we're successful with this funding, how do we deal with some of the challenges that might bring up with our night shelter, instant access kind of clientele. So I'd love to be able to connect afterwards and learn a little bit more from the St Anne's situation, if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I've dropped my email into the chat. We're advising on that funding as well. So if you're successful, then it'll be me that'll be working with the different successful organisations to help you to develop those approaches. So, but happy to speak to you separately anyway.
Great.
We haven't stopped working with
a cake or something. Just to...
I'm not on the panel. I will say that I'm not on the panel. Just to say as well, it's not that we have stopped working with St Anne's. We've just looked at how we can help the organisation to build their capacity for delivering support on site rather than gifting the devices. So there's always ways around. It's just finding the right approach.
Great, thanks, Amy. Just to let everyone know, in the notes, we will give the email addresses of all the speakers out to everyone, if that's okay. Yeah, everyone's nodding, that's great. So yeah, if you need to speak to them, you can directly contact them. Are there any more questions for Amy? No, I don't think so. Okay. Great. What I'm going to do now is just play a video from a participant in the SHIPS program, and that will lead in nicely to Sudden Speaking, who is working on that. So I'm just going to share my screen again.
Hi, I'm Darren O'Connell. I'm the coordinator for the SHIPS programme. What we're aiming to do is to work with people with a lived experience with homelessness and related issues. We put together a comprehensive training programme which will cover every aspect of advocacy to help people develop their skills to be not just to only be an advocate, but to move on and develop their own careers. And that's one of the fundamental things about the project.
My name's Lee Appleyard. I started off taking drugs when I was about 12 years old. Someone older than me offered me drugs. I thought that basically they were my friends because, you know, we got messed up together and we hung out for those reasons. I now know that they were just codependent relationships and there was nothing actual real about them. It wasn't a real friendship like based on a strong foundation of trust and honesty and understanding and support. That's what I have nowadays. But I eventually progressed to all the party drugs, but when people stopped after the weekend, they'd go to work, and then we'd go into education. I continued to oblivion, and it just went on and on. Like, my tolerance went through the roof, so I'd need the next drug, the next stronger drug, and that tolerance would go through the roof. And it got to the point where it was crack cocaine and heroin, and the only way that I could fund that, honestly, was by going out on the streets and begging. And I'd gone through treatment, and had a lot of support, and thank God for those people that cared enough to, you know, be honest with me and open up about their stories and help me to open up about myself. And one of them was one of my key workers from a place called Forward Leeds. Now, she got in touch with me one day and said, oh, we've been sent an email about this place, Bevan Healthcare, and they're looking for people to volunteer with something called SHIPS, which is peer advocacy. And I just jumped at the chance, because like I say, I'm trying to get my foot in the door and get into this line of work. So I just thought this would be perfect, and the support they're willing to give me to find my way into this line of work is priceless for me. So I hope that I can do some good. I honestly wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for people that had their own lived experience and they were able to relate to my situation more than, say, a medical professional who, you know, a lot of the time, if I felt like medical professionals thought it was this sort of dictionary definition, just something they read, and it was that I was that black and white. When the complexity of people is just no two people can be the same. Everyone's raised in different ways. They deal with different things emotionally. So addiction for two people can be completely different.
Very many people that are on the programme highlight the fact that they actually are on a recovery journey themselves, and doing things like getting involved in voluntary work does actually help with that.
I look healthy and I sound compass mentis now, but I'm far from perfect. I've still got defects. I've still got a lot to work on. Still a lot to learn about myself. But what helps with talking with other people, trying to help other people, is that it's not just one-sided, it works both ways. So whilst I'm helping somebody else, they're talking about things that I didn't even realise that I can relate to, and I go, oh wait, so that's how you've dealt with it. Oh, I can apply that to myself. So I'm always learning from other people. So I think it's beneficial to be in this role for me to learn about myself and become a better, more rounded version of myself.
If you are in a situation, you know, you live in hand to mouth, you're on streets, you're not going to necessarily have all the resources and energy and to frank willpower in some cases to actually get through to a doctor, to go down to a doctor. So, you know, again, if you've got that access to that digitally, you could have that conversation, you can have that appointment online. So it immediately breaks down the barriers and enables people to improve their health.
I think that a lack of technology or basic digital skills can be a huge barrier for people that are homeless when they're trying to reintegrate back into society. These are skills they might need for, say, so if you go into like the housing office and you're bidding for a council property, you need to do online bidding. There's going to be things like accessing medical reports, you know, setting up appointments, just engaging with services, or even just registering with services so you can get that support, so you can get help.
All the people who we're working with have all got amazing, complex stories, but the commitment that they are bringing to the project is truly amazing, and you know, it just makes you think. You should stand back and think, you know, these are the people that really do need to be running projects like this, and through this SHIPS programme, that's exactly what will happen.
Before, the city was just places I would go and meet dealers. There's even these steps behind me. The last time I was here, I was injecting. I remember being covered in blood and trying to hide it from people walking past. Now this is somewhere I can come and meet people like you and do a project like this. There's restaurants where I can go and meet my friends, my family. There's job opportunities like working with Bevan Healthcare. You know, I get to rewrite those memories, those horrible memories that are tied in with the city. I get to walk around now as a new person and rewrite those memories as good things with opportunities.
I was just about to I was just about to thank Lee for speaking, but then I realised it was a recording.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to hand over.
Sorry, Saraya, go on.
I was going to say I'm going to hand over to Sadhana Patel, who you're the health and wellbeing lead at Bevan Healthcare.
I am. Thank you, and thank you to Lee, who's not here. I did invite him, but he had something else on. And just to say that Lee now has a full-time position with an organisation in Leeds, following his work with us. So that's absolutely a brilliant outcome for Lee. Right, I'm just going to share. I have another go at sharing again. Do you know what? I'm just going to talk through it. It's fine. So, as with most of us, the pandemic meant that everything, all points of access, either moved online or through telephone, meaning that highlighting, we had a massive community that was excluded because they didn't have digital access. So things like their familiar and social networks were closed or had limited availability. Third sector support such as soup kitchens, food banks, support groups, self-help groups, everything was, I suppose, 2 years ago, everything was limited and shut down. So part of our solution was to work with technology, people like Amy from 100% Digital and with Groundswell to address some of those barriers. So we came up with a program called Smart Health Inclusion Peer Advocates. We recruited a group of people who had lived experience of either being homeless, a refugee, or somebody seeking asylum. The aim of the project was to have a, like Amy says, have a certain person-centered approach on interventions that were co-produced. So the co-production would give us a better insight into having a provision that would impact those individuals the most. Not only develop the improve literacy with the advocate, but also the service user as well. Recognise that lots of people come with expertise themselves, and to build on that expertise and those skills that people have, and promote self-care and prevention as an aim. That was one of our aims. We started recruitment, and our partners in the city helped with that. We had lots of referrals from support workers or similar type roles. The recruitment started, we had quite a long recruitment, actually about maybe 6-7 weeks. And we wanted to keep the momentum. So as soon as people recruited, we carried out some face-to-face interviews. We went to see people. We wanted to make sure that people were right at their point of their journey. We don't want to set anybody up to fail. You know, the advocacy program is a massive commitment of 1 or 2 days a week. Also, they have to take part in a 6-day training program delivered by Groundswell. So, and if we felt that the person wasn't quite ready for the advocacy program, we'd put them on our volunteering program, and then took it from there. The 6-day program covered things around advocacy skills, the role, the expectation, boundaries, confidentiality, safeguarding. Gave an insight into homelessness, those seeking asylum, refugees, because those two parties didn't really understand, it didn't have really insight, they had no connection. So we sort of socially engineered that really, and which was fantastic to see those two groups of communities having a real insight and understanding about each other's challenges. It's been remarkable. So far, we've trained 3 cohorts. The first cohort was trained via Zoom. We all gave them a device to use. The other 2 cohorts have been trained face to face. So far, we've employed 4 people at Bevan from that cohort. 4, because Lee got a job last week. 4 have been employed elsewhere. 5 have gone into further education, and 7 decided that advocacy wasn't for them. So they've got a different type of role. Some of them have got a different type of role supporting Bevan and the service users. And for some, it's just not for them right now, depending on where they are in terms of the journey. Currently, we've got 29 advocates in both Leeds and Bradford. They have ongoing team meetings bi-monthly, and every other week they have a training, some kind of update in terms of training. So they might have something around trauma-informed care, motivational interviewing, first aid, safeguarding, and those subjects are presented by the advocates themselves. It's something that they identify themselves. Some of the challenges have been through DBS, getting the DBS, but we have a risk assessment to mitigate any concerns there. They support the team in terms of the social prescribing, making welfare calls. We have service users that come into the practice. They support with downloading the NHS app, looking for jobs. Amy's Good Services, get them some digital tech, whatever that might be a phone, it might be a tablet, it might be something different. Those advocates can help with service users to bid for housing, welfare, supporting welfare benefits. Lots, and I think there's 3 or 4 of them have joined online full-time courses. Not only have they supported the individuals, but supported their families as well. Online services through schools. When everything went online, accessing the curriculum, that was a real, I suppose, a barrier. If you have 3 children in your house and you have 1 smartphone, how do you do that? So we managed to help with that. Registering at GP practices when you move on from here. So there's a whole range of support in terms of digital access that we were able to provide with our SHIPS advocates. We do recognise that not everybody wants to go into employment, but lots do want to go into employment, and just volunteering, that's absolutely fine as well. In terms of the impact in terms of digital, not only did it improve people's confidence, it improved their access to healthcare, it improved language skills, confidence, it improved accommodation situations, like I said, bidding for properties, reduced their own isolation, gave them opportunity to socialise and develop a network as well. Sorry, Sarah, is that 5 minutes? Is that all right? Right, I've got loads, but I know I've only got 5 minutes, so am I okay, Sarah, to carry on, or are you all right?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. You've got about 3 minutes left.
Okay. So some of the things, So some of the things that advocates get back, they get a sense of giving back an achievement, feel valued. Some of our service users say, the way people look at you, the way you're dressed, if you've had a couple of nights sitting on the street, there's this still sense of labelling. It's so detrimental to their own mental health and well-being, and an opportunity to sustain their own recovery as well, for their own progression and well-being. I think that's been really valuable. The ability to manage their own situation as well, to look for resources, but like Lee said, and pass those resources and insight into other service users, and generally have improved their well-being because they're socially connected. I mean, the last 2 years have been, people have been so isolated, haven't they? So it's got an opportunity to improve that network as well. We've had people who have not connected with their families for absolutely years. We had this one gentleman flee his country 13 years ago. The first thing he did was download WhatsApp so that he connected with his family. We've had people, like Mr. said, that connecting with family just locally, just connecting with family locally. we found that if you had a device, you didn't have the language. If you had the language, you didn't have a device. So this has met some of our needs and helped support our service users. Throughout the whole project of SHIPS, we have co-produced every aspect with our service users. So now we've got service users having an insight into, we're just rebranding our website. They're on there. They run the PPG, our patient participation group. They sit on one of our health intervention boards. So a real, that confidence has brought additional confidence of an opportunity that they can actually support Severn and the services that we provide. It's got a real insight and it's got their real input. I hope that's okay.
Great, thank you so much, Sadhana. Do we have any questions for Sadhana at this stage? I don't see any hands up at the moment. No? Okay. Oh, my timer's going off. Okay, what we'll do, we have a few minutes left. So are there any questions for anyone right now? We kind of open it up to the floor. No? Okay, I think all the questions have been asked then. So what I'm going to do now is just hand over to Julie very quickly. Julie is the project manager at Homeless Link and is also one of our trustees. So Julie, would you?
Okay, thanks, Sarah. You're just going to put that further resources slide.
Yes, I'm going to share my screen now.
I won't say very much, but just to reflect how brilliant it is to be with like-minded people, actually, who understand how important digital inclusion is. And at Homeless Link, part of my role there was trying to lead on, sharing good practice within the sector. And one idea is it would be great maybe to have a network of people in the sector with an interest in digital inclusion. So maybe this sort of event could continue at a more informal level, sort of sharing information and collaborating. But just very briefly, we can share this sheet with you. But Good Things Foundation have been mentioned, obviously a brilliant national charity, digital inclusion charity. Just little ideas of things you can do. Your organisation, you might want to think about, if you're not already, becoming an online centre, that you join a network of online centres where you might provide some level of support with digital inclusion. And that really opens the door to lots of other things, that sort of funding opportunities and support from Good Things Foundation. Good Things Foundation also have Learn My Way. I don't know, a lot of people will be familiar with it. Absolutely brilliant resources for people to get online, a huge range of basic online courses and much more detailed ones too, all free. And they also have resources for teaching others or supporting others. So great resources. And I think it's been mentioned, but I really thought of plugging. They've got a national data bank. It's a fairly new initiative. It's a big bank of data where if you are a charity, you can apply to allocate that data to your clients. You can either get, I think, their data vouchers or their SIM cards. They're only up for 12 months, up to 12 months. They do at the moment anyway, they're doing a rolling application window. So you've got, say, till the end of March as a charity to apply. There's a link there to be able to allocate that free data yourself. Homeless Link, we've worked with Good Things Foundation. We've got some resources and a basic guide, covers a lot of what we talked about today, specific to the homelessness sector, what homelessness organisations can do. And one of the things that I just sort of felt like everybody can do something. This isn't a niche or a very specialist area. Everybody can do something to support with digital inclusion. Social tariffs, something else we just briefly mentioned. I think there's a lot going on about, there's not enough awareness out there. that a lot of the broadband providers do now have social tariffs, not all of them, but those are some links there. Tesco Mobile, they also help with phones, devices and SIM cards. Those are the links there to apply. I think I just spotted they might not have any phones and devices left, but more information there. Vodafone offers something similar. Digital Poverty Alliance, fairly new organisation, and I think they're doing something about an online space for good practice sharing, so that might be worth looking at. Citizens Online, they provide a free helpline. I think they've got hundreds of specialist tech volunteers who give up their time to help people, use their digital devices and get online. And if anyone works with refugees, Refugee Action have got some really good pages on their website on advice to help refugees, asylum seekers with tackling digital exclusion. It was a whistle-stop tour. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Julie. And wow, we've got 2 minutes left, so finished right on time. Yeah, I just want to say a very big thank you to everyone for dialing in today. We had 30 participants join, which is the most that we've had in the last couple of years for our network event. So this is food for thought in terms of future network events and maybe what really gets people in to dial in. Want to also say a very big thank you to Jamie, Matt, Amy and Sadhana for presenting today. Really appreciate your expertise, your knowledge, your passion, and I think you kind of have ignited passion within the network to bring digital inclusion to the forefront. So thank you very much. And with that being said, Gary, would you like to say anything, any final words, or are you going to stay quiet?
No, it's great that. Just great to hear just that diversity of where people are in their, journeys with this as cities, as locations, and learning from each other. Just all the things. When we started, I think it was Marianne. That first listening. It's all the things that we take for granted, isn't it? I know this is like really obvious, but all the things that we access on digital, and it's just that thing, isn't it? It's like almost like a human right, isn't it? Of trying to include more people digitally. It's just so critical. But there's a hell of a lot of work to do. Just scratching this, evidence here is awesome, but there's just so much to do.
There is a lot to do, but it feels like we've got a really good network here who can start doing the work that needs to be done to digitally include all those people. Yeah. Wow. Well, I think that's it. We're finished on the dot. 8 o'clock for me, 12 o'clock for you. Fantastic. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. And what we'll do, Mara's been writing the notes. So in the next couple of days, we will send the notes to you. We will send the recording. We'll also send the presentations and also the further resources list that Julie has kindly put together. So you should receive that by Friday at the latest. Thank you for joining, everyone. And yeah, we'll speak to you soon.